Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Ethan's life takes a sharp turn when he runs into his pregnant ex-wife, Amelia. As he confronts past mistakes and embraces unexpected fatherhood, he discovers that true success lies not in wealth but in redemption, love, and family. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. What if the past you buried deep came back when you least expected it? Not quietly, but with a loud crashes so sudden and jarring it threatened to tear apart everything you had worked so hard to build. That's exactly what happened to Ethan. He was standing outside an elegant high-end restaurant, fixing his tie in the shiny glass of the window. The night was important, special. It wasn't just any dinner, it was a carefully planned evening. A chance for Ethan to show Sarah, his girlfriend, just how much he appreciated her. It was about showing her that she was part of the future he was building. With a confident smile practiced many times in the mirror, he walked into the softly lit dining room. His eyes found Sarah at once. She looked breathtaking, her sapphire blue dress shimmering gently under the golden lights. The restaurant was the picture of luxury, with warm lighting and stylish decor that whispered exclusivity. Ethan sat down across from her, offering a smooth compliment that made her blush just a little as the sommelier poured them a bottle of expensive wine. Everything felt right. For the first time since his divorce, life seemed to be falling into place. Sarah was everything his new beginning represented, graceful, and untouched by the emotional wreckage he'd left behind. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, laughter blending with the soft clinking of cutlery, each moment more comfortable than the last. But then, in one unplanned second, the perfect picture shattered. Ethan glanced around to get a waiter's attention, and that's when he saw her. His breath caught in his throat. Just a few feet away, in a server's uniform, stood Amelia, his ex-wife. She looked so different and yet so painfully familiar. Her apron didn't hide much, her pregnant belly was visible beneath it. Pregnant. The realization hit him like a slap. His stomach twisted. A cold wave of shock and nausea swept over him. What was she doing here? Why was she working? And more terrifyingly, who was the father of that baby? He remembered how, after their divorce, Amelia had firmly turned down any help from him. She had insisted she would rebuild her life on her own. Now, seeing her like this, working on her feet, heavily pregnant, in a place like this, struck something deep within him. Guilt, real and biting. The room, just moments ago so warm and welcoming, suddenly felt like a trap. Its air heavy and hard to breathe. Ethan sat frozen, fists clenched under the table, heart pounding like a drum. Questions flooded his mind faster than he could answer them. What had happened to her? Was she okay? And whose child was she carrying? Sarah kept speaking, unaware of the emotional storm raging inside him. She smiled, laughed, and kept the conversation moving until she finally noticed the look in his eyes, the stare fixed on something behind her. Is everything okay, love? She asked, her voice gently concerned. Her question pulled Amelia's attention. Sensing the energy shift, Amelia turned, saw Ethan, and just as quickly disappeared through a side door. Ethan sat in stunned silence. Words escaped him. His mind wasn't in that room anymore. It was racing through memories, confusion, and regret. 8 months had passed since they ended their marriage. At that time he had done everything possible to bury the past and focus on the future. He had believed he was starting fresh, leaving everything behind. But now, he couldn't help but wonder, was that baby conceived before the divorce? Just after? The timing didn't quite fit neatly, and that uncertainty sent a fresh chill down his spine. Do you know her? Sarah asked, watching him closely now. Ethan shook his head too quickly, too unconvincingly. Sarah didn't press, but her silence said everything. As dinner went on, Ethan barely touched his food. He nodded, smiled, and tried to act like everything was fine, but his thoughts were far away, locked on Amelia, on the last hard months of their marriage, months filled with tension, arguments, and unmet needs. She had begged for his attention, for his emotional presence, but he had been too caught up in work and the pursuit of success. He thought ending the marriage was the right decision, the clean break. But now, seeing her Ugandan pregnant maid, that certainty crumble. Throughout the evening, Ethan kept glancing toward the door she had vanished through, half hoping, half dreading that she might return. She didn't. Later, when Sarah stepped away to use the restroom, Ethan grabbed the moment. He signaled to the nearest waiter. "Excuse me," he said, trying to sound calm. "The server who was working this section earlier, what's her name?" The waiter looked puzzled, then said, "Amelia, I think. She just finished her shift." She's been here a few months now. The name hit Ethan like a punch. Hearing it from someone else made everything more real. She had been working there for months. While he had moved on, she had been trying to survive. That image, Amelia, pregnant, wearing that uniform, burned itself into his mind. When Sarah returned, Ethan had managed to regain some of his composure. They left the restaurant together, and he tried to chat as if everything was fine. But she noticed she could tell something was off. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked gently as they got into the car. "Yeah, just tired," he replied, not meeting her eyes. That night, while Sarah slept peacefully beside him, Ethan lay awake staring at the ceiling. Haunted, Amelia's face, her belly, the way she had turned away, not meeting his gaze. He had buried the past, or so he thought, but now it was rising again and with more power than he could have ever imagined. With his heart racing, he hurried over to her and said, "Thanks for coming," with sincerity. "I don't know what you expect from this conversation," Amelia said, looking at him with a mixture of resignation and weariness. "But I don't have time for games. I just want answers," she continued. Ethan replied, "I want to know how we got here and whether the baby is mine or his." The final word was barely audible, but it was enough to harden Amelia's eyes, so pay great attention. She crossed her arms, saying, "I don't want to repeat what happened to me." When the reality you've been avoiding for years suddenly hits you and demands not only acceptance but also a commitment, Amelia looked at him carefully. Her face displaying a mixture of Ethan stood in front of her, steely-willed and exhausted. Feeling the weight of when he looked at her, he noticed that she was not the same woman he had known. There was something unusual about her. He took a deep breath and tried to remain composed as he waited for her to say, "The baby is yours," because the situation had altered. When she finally said, "Ethan," her tone was forceful and direct, as though she were, "I'm sick of keeping the secret to myself, but I don't expect that to mean anything more. I'm doing just well by myself. I require something from you." Her words struck Ethan like a blast of cold air. Although he had thought about it, hearing it straight from Amelia made it seem more true. His tone wasn't accusing, but "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Tumultuous and slightly painful. "We had a right to know, Amelia. I had a right to know that." Although she laughed, it wasn't a happy sound. Rather, it was filled with frustration. "Right? What are you talking about, Ethan? You were there for me when I needed you. Never existed, and now you feel entitled to something," she said, pausing her gaze. "I knew you couldn't provide me with anything except excuses, so I decided not to come seeking for you, to proceed without you, as it was in my best interests and the best interests of this baby." Ethan felt Amelia's words cut through all of his barriers of self-defense, and he knew she was correct in a sense. Often put his career and desire before of her, but the fact that she had made such a drastic choice, "Amelia, I realize I made mistakes, but leaving him out made him feel even more cut off from what had been his life. I know I failed as a husband," he added, trying to keep his voice steady. "However, this baby is unique. He is also my child, and I want to be involved in his life. If it's late." She observed him silently for a while, seemingly assessing the sincerity of his statements, and then "I don't know if I can trust you, Ethan, after everything I thought," as I groaned and turned away. "I've learned to handle things on my own since that incident, and I don't want this kid to experience what I did with you. Ethan asked that I show you that I've changed, but I'm not claiming it will be simple. However, even if we don't reconcile, I want to try for the kid for us." Amelia shook her head, refusing to give in. "I don't believe you, but I also can't deny my child the chance to know his father," she replied quietly. "But Ethan, this doesn't mean I'm handing you another shot. You'll need to work for it if you want to participate." Accepting her challenge, Ethan agreed. He had a lot to prove to Amelia and himself, but he thought at the time, under the faint street lights, that maybe this was the start of something new, something he couldn't afford to ruin. When the truth eventually came to light, it compels you to tear down the very life you have painstakingly created, leaving a path of broken hopes in its wake. When Ethan got home the following day, his thoughts were racing from his chat with Amelia, still replayed. In his mind, every remark full of criticism and unsettling facts, and he knew she was correct. He had to demonstrate that he wouldn't repeat the same mistakes as a father after failing her as a spouse. But as he attempted to process everything, he also felt that he needed to confront Sarah about something else. Sarah was making coffee in the kitchen when she welcomed him with her typical welcoming smile. "You're home early today," unaware of the thoughts torturing Ethan, she said, gently pouring the liquid into 2 mugs. "How was your day?" Ethan paused before responding. Although he had been trying to avoid this talk, he realized that he couldn't keep the truth from her for much longer since Sarah wasn't stupid. We need to talk, he said at last, realizing that his increasing distraction had not gone unnoticed. Sarah placed the mug on the counter and turned to face him as he spoke in a serious tone. When she noticed the look on Ethan's face, her smile disappeared. What's incorrect? She inquired anxiously, and he inhaled deeply to collect his thoughts. Amelia mentioned his name to me yesterday when we were at the restaurant. Sarah scowled at her ex-wife, who was aware of the divorce but had hardly talked to Ethan. She inquired about Amelia as though she were a closed and shelved chapter in his life. Ethan added carefully, she was working there, and she's pregnant. Sarah, the baby is mine. The voice was strained, and there was a heavy hush. Sarah suffocated as she gazed at him, her eyes wide with confusion and incredulity. She appeared to take in his remarks carefully as though she was still in shock. Are you implying that your ex-wife is yes? Ethan said. You're just now learning that you're pregnant with your child. She told me last night that she was experiencing the full weight of the issue, and I had no idea before I encountered Sarah. I knew nothing about her. She took a step back and crossed herself. She had been developing a relationship with Ethan for months. With her arms folded across her chest, everything she believed to be true about him was suddenly disintegrating, despite her belief that he had moved on from his past. And what does this imply for us? What are you doing? She inquired in an emotionally charged voice. Ethan firmly stated, I want to be a part of my son's life, but I can't do that now. Sarah, disregard this. It's my duty. She gazed at him with a mixture of anguish and despair. Does everything now center around Amelia and that baby Sarah? Or what about us? Where do I fit into all of this? He attempted to explain that it has nothing to do with how I feel about you, but I can't abandon my child. I hope you can realize that. Sarah shook her head and that tears were welling up in her eyes. But I'm not sure if I don't know if I can participate in this, but I can, Ethan. Sarah interrupted her look, reflecting on an internal conflict. I need some time to realize that this isn't what I had anticipated. From our relationship, she walked out of the room without waiting for his reply. He knew his choice would have repercussions, but he never anticipated leaving Ethan alone with his mounting sense of loss. Ethan stood by himself in the kitchen, staring at the door, knowing that they may cost him a lot. Sarah had used to leave the house, which was typically cozy and inviting. Sarah's response, which now appeared icy and quiet, had been a shock to him, but he couldn't hold it against her. He knew it wouldn't be simple for her to comprehend everything that was going on, and he could hardly process it all, accept the consequences of his choice as he drove to work the following day. Ethan kept asking himself whether he was making the correct decisions. On the one hand, unquestionably, he had a duty to Amelia and the infant because it was his child. He couldn't permit himself to become the absent parent he had always dreaded becoming. Still, Sarah, the woman he had started a new life with, suddenly appeared to be at risk of disintegrating during a break. Ethan shut himself in his office throughout the workday, gave himself some time to think, took out his phone, and he called Amelia almost instinctively. The call was short, and he wanted to ensure that they could speak later when they would both be more at ease. Amelia concurred, but with a tinge of that evening. Ethan went back to the eatery where Amelia worked, ready to talk despite the fatigue. In her voice, Amelia more obviously met him outside the business with the same worn-out look that had been on her face since their first meeting. Ethan, what do you want? With her arms crossed, she inquired as, I don't want to fight, he responded, raising his voice as if he were getting ready for a battle, putting his hands together in a peaceful gesture. I just want to talk about the baby, of how we can deal with this together. Amelia nodded and groaned, but her posture stayed after taking a long breath. Ethan said defensively, all right, talk. I know I apologize for not being the guy you needed before, Amelia. This baby is my opportunity to make amends. It's appropriate for me to demonstrate my ability to be a better father and man. I don't want you to do things by yourself. She gave him a long look before assessing his remarks. She said, how are you going to do that, Ethan? It's not enough to say you want to help. You have to be there, being dependable and not fading away when times are difficult. I won't place this infant in a precarious situation. I'm aware that she seems surprised by his sincere response, and I wish to demonstrate my commitment by allowing me to gain your trust rather than asking for it right away. Amelia saw that although he was still hesitant, there was something in Ethan's resolve appeared different at last, and she nodded. Although nothing had changed between Ethan, if you truly want to be involved, you'll have to understand that this is my top priority. To demonstrate it, Ethan had a mixture of relief and concern as he drove home that evening. He had made a significant move. However, he was aware that the most difficult element was still to come. Between his obligations to Amelia and the babies, life, which had once been completely under control, was now a mess as he attempted to salvage what remained of his relationship with Sarah. He had to confront the pandemonium head, knowing that unsaid promises may be broken and that fresh promises made when a man decides to confront his history and welcome a future. He never imagined that the days that followed would be as tense as Ethan was used to. He felt as though he was walking a tightrope after gaining control over every element of his life. On the one hand, there was the commitment to Amelia and the child. On the other hand, as well as his relationship with Sarah appeared to be getting worse with every talk. She had become aloof, spent more time outside the house, and Ethan understood. He had to face that circumstance, but each time he tried to keep significant conversations to a minimum. When he attempted to speak with her, the discussions descended into heated confrontations, and Ethan could see why Sarah was upset. However, Amelia and the baby remained his top priorities, so Ethan chose to concentrate on what he could accomplish. Recognizing that words alone would not gain Amelia's trust, he decided to demonstrate his seriousness to her one afternoon after he visited a baby store after work. Not knowing what he was looking for, still, he browsed the aisles with decided to buy a cot, clothes, nappies and a few other items after quickly consulting his assistant for suggestions. Toys. That evening he packed the presents into his van and headed to Amelia's tiny bags in hand. He ascended the steps of the flat, feeling oddly anxious. He knocked on the door and waited as if he were going to a big job interview, and Amelia opened it with Anne when she saw Ethan loaded down with parcels. Her expression of surprise swiftly changed to caution. "What are you doing?" "I brought some things for the baby," she said, crossing her arms. "I know it's still a while off, but I thought maybe we could start getting ready." "I want to help," she said, displaying the bags. She gazed at him for a few moments that seemed to go on forever. Amelia, trying to figure out what he was up to, she finally moved aside to let him enter. Ethan put the suitcases in the corner of the tiny living room and took a glance around. It was a simple yet hospitable space. Amelia was obviously making the most of what she had, and when she eventually remarked, "It's a lot," she was glancing at the suitcases, feeling both thankful and suspicious. "You didn't have to do this, I know," Ethan said earnestly, "but even if I can't undo what transpired between us, Amelia, I can be here right now." Amelia groaned and lowered herself onto the couch, her eyes fixed on you and the infant. "Being a little softer doesn't mean I don't trust you completely, Ethan, but thank you. This will be helpful." Without attempting to coerce her further, Ethan nodded in acceptance of her statement. He was prepared to wait a little while since he knew it would take some time to gain her trust. Ethan decided to leave after several uncomfortable minutes of silence. "If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to phone me." Amelia glanced at him before he left, regardless of when she led him to the door. As he drove home, Ethan felt a slight smile and said, "Thank you, Ethan." A glimmer of hope. He still had a lot to fix, but at least he had made the initial move. Even though his life was still chaotic that evening, he permitted himself to think he was headed in the right direction. Ethan started to become more involved with Amelia's life and the baby's coming preparations. Even while she kept a certain emotional distance, she didn't decline his assistance. He worked with her for several hours to put the cot he had purchased together and arranged a small infant clothing, ensuring she had all she needed, and sharing every gesture. Ethan tried to show that he was genuinely serious this time. But Sarah hardly spoke to him and spent nights away at a friend's house as their relationship deteriorated. Ethan was aware that he had to deal with that circumstance, but each time he attempted to speak with her, the conversation terminated. Sarah was upset by the heated confrontations, and Ethan understood why. But despite Amelia and the infant were his top priorities, and one afternoon he helped Amelia quietly observed him while organizing the final elements in the flat. Ethan concentrated on setting up a tiny mobile above the cot, but the sofa didn't. When he finished, he turned to face Amelia. He noticed something in her eyes that he hadn't noticed in a long time, with a mixture of appreciation and possibly a touch of respect. "You've changed," Amelia murmured abruptly, shattering the quiet, and Ethan was taken aback. "You think so?" With a hint of hope in his voice, he inquired. Amelia crossed her arms and nodded, saying, "I'm not sure if you're the same man I married. However, I am aware that Ethan is making an effort," which is why he sat next to her. Taking a minute to process her words, "I want you to know that I sincerely apologize for what transpired before. I'm here now, and I won't let you down again, even though I can't undo what I did." Amelia didn't reply right away. She appeared to be struggling with her ideas and anxieties before speaking quietly. I hope you're consistent because this baby deserves it, and I agree with Ethan that everything should be perfect. He knew he still had a lot to show, but for the first time in months, he thought he understood the significance of those words. He was starting to re-establish a relationship with Amelia that same evening back at his house, even if it wasn't amorous. Sarah was waiting for him in the main room of the house when Ethan arrived. Her face was icy and determined, as though she had made a choice she couldn't put off any longer. As she crossed her arms and stated, "We need to talk," Ethan groaned and took a seat across from her. Even though it hurt, he knew he couldn't stop it since he knew what was coming. Sarah responded, "I can't go on like this," in a stern yet emotionally charged voice. "Your child, Amelia, and I must come first in your life. I'm not the kind of woman who can tolerate being a secondary concern," Ethan agreed, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I need something different. I apologize for putting you in this situation, Sarah, and I understand." She gave him one look. "Last time, I hope you find what you're looking for," with a mixture of sadness and resignation. When Sarah went, Ethan was left alone while she searched for him and took care of that baby. He felt a void in his chest, but he also realized with a clarity he had not previously had that notwithstanding lost Sarah, by putting his child and Amelia first, he was acting morally. It was the cost of his previous transgressions, but he was prepared to accept it. With the start of a new life, he felt for the first time in a long time that he was headed in the right way. The day came when the family was formed on unexpected foundations, and old wounds were healed, allowing a chance for forgiveness. Earlier than anticipated, Ethan was in his office going over documents when his phone rang, and he glanced at the screen when he responded. Ethan. Amelia's name made his gut clench. She said in a strained voice, "It's the baby. I'm at the hospital." The words struck him like a lightning bolt. Ethan dropped everything and hurried out without any delay. His mind was racing in a haze of fear during the hectic trip to the hospital. He was both excited and afraid because he didn't think the time would arrive so quickly. Yet he knew he had to be there to demonstrate his sincerity. And when he got to the hospital, he discovered Amelia in a bed, her face calm but pale. With a nurse by her side who was Ethan walked carefully towards her, his heart racing as he adjusted the monitors surrounding her. He softly took her hand and inquired, "How are you?" Amelia said, "I'm fine." They both laughed quietly as they said, "I think he's just eager to meet you." Despite the tension in the air, Ethan remained by her side for the next few hours to ensure she needed everything. And even though the wait was long and tiring, Ethan remained steadfast in his resolve to be there. After what seemed like an age for her and his child, the physicians Ethan came in and started delivering, holding Amelia's hand firmly, expressing support as she battled with each contraction. He had never experienced something like the baby's cry filled the room, and Ethan felt his entire world shift. It was a moment that would forever alter him. Ethan was unable to stop the newborn when the doctor put it in Amelia's arms, tears streaming down his cheeks. There was a boy who was flawless and delicate, hardly clothed, Ethan said. "He's beautiful," while observing the infant in a tiny blanket, with a tired expression on her face. Amelia said, "He's our son. Additionally, he is really satisfied." The following few minutes were a flurry of feelings. Ethan felt a connection with the baby that he had never felt before. As soon as he held him, everything else vanished, including past errors, uncertainties, and anxieties. There was only him, Amelia, and that later, as Amelia lay in bed, a small creature who had just entered the world. "I swear, I'll be there for you, too," Ethan said, as he sat next to her holding the infant. Despite being exhausted, Amelia gave him a feeble look as he firmly stated, "I won't fail you." For the sake of this child, Ethan felt as though a grin was possible that night. A new chapter in his life had begun. He had lost a lot, but he had also earned something priceless. The opportunity to be. He wasn't going to waste it, and thought it would be better to create something genuine and long. Part 8. The unconventional family. What does it mean to be genuinely successful in life? Is it financial gain or having the guts 2 months after the baby's birth? Accept an imperfect route to a deep bond and a resilient family. Ethan's schedule, which had previously been controlled by long work hours and never-ending meetings, now focused on his son's little but tiny diaper bottles. Important turning points. Even though the journey hadn't been simple, and each sacrifice was worth it when he held his child's small hand in his Amelia or saw him grin. Even while she kept a certain emotional distance from Ethan, she had started to see him from a different perspective. Because of his sincere efforts, he attended every doctor's visit, every restless night, and every minor. She would occasionally observe him playing with the infant and question whether this was a moment that needed perseverance and commitment. Beneath the overzealous ambition that had once kept them apart, one afternoon, Ethan had always been there. It was a lovely day, and the baby was sleeping when they arrived in the park, where Ethan pushed the pram while Amelia walked next to him. Ethan interrupted the quiet calmly beneath a tree's shade by saying, "You know," he remarked, staring at the course that I never imagined my life would take, but I can't think of anything different now. Amelia looked at him, assessing the genuineness in his voice. "You've transformed, Ethan, as seen by your concern for our son, but keep in mind that you're still establishing this trust." I know he nodded slightly in response overnight, "and I'm willing to keep working hard for you as much as for him, and I want you to know that I'm available for anything you need." Amelia grinned a little, yet sincere smile. "Ethan, you're doing better than I anticipated over time." Even though they didn't rekindle their romance, their dynamic started to improve as they were able to strike a balance that permitted them to share parental responsibilities and, in a way, be friends. Ethan tried to be steadfast in proving by deeds what words alone could not fix in a single day. The infant, who was already beginning to chatter, held out as they were playing with him in Amelia's living room. He smiled mischievously as he held his arms out to Ethan and murmured, "Papa," and Ethan felt a lump in his heart was racing, and it was the first time he had heard his son say that phrase. Amelia glanced at him, and pride, affection, and a glimmer of optimism were mixed in her eyes. She smiled and continued, "He likes you. I hope he always does." Ethan answered, taking I swear to the infant in his arms that I will never let the family that once fragmented was now figuring things out on its own. It wasn't flawless, but it was real, and that was plenty for Ethan. He discovered that real success lay not in his financial situation or career, but rather in the relationships he formed with the individuals who mattered most, and this time, he wasn't going to let it pass. He called for action and concluded by considering the surprising route to did the tale of change and salvation resonate with you, friends? Every choice we make has the power to alter not only our own lives, but also the lives of those we care about the most. If Ethan's journey is any indication, please remember to like and share this video with your friends if it touched you in any way regarding fatherhood and reconciliation. Additionally, if you like, they can offer insights into the significance of familial ties and the force of change. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our heartfelt and motivational stories. Where are you seeing our upcoming videos? We would love to hear more from you. Leave a remark below. We'd love to hear your ideas and get in touch.